Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in this world. God bless you. This is Gloria White coming to you from Utah, USA. Today we are in this book of 2 Kings in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible, and we are in chapter 6, the Acts Lost and Found. The brotherhood of prophets said to Elisha, "Look, the place where we are, living with you, is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan. Then, and each of us cut a beam there, and we will make our living quarters there." He replied, "Go. Be good enough to go with it. Be good enough to go with your servants," one of them said. "I will go," he replied, and went with them. On reaching the Jordan, they began cutting down timber, but as one of them was felling his beam, the iron axe head fell into the water. "Alas, my lord," he exclaimed, "and it was a borrowed one too." "Where did it fall?" the man of God asked, and he showed him the spot. Then, cutting a stick, Elijah threw it at that point and made the iron axe head float. "Lift it out," he said, and the man stretched out his hand and took it. Section D. The Armenian Wars. Elisha captures an armed band of Armenians. The king of Aram was at war with Israel. He conferred with his officers and said, "You must attack at such and such a place." Elisha, however, sent word to the king of Israel, "Be on your guard about such and such a place, because the Armenians are going to attack it." The king of Israel accordingly sent men to the place which Elijah had named, and he kept warning the king, and the king stayed on the alert. And this happened more than once or twice. The king of Aram grew very much disturbed over this. He summoned his officers and said, "Tell me which of you is betraying us to the king of Israel?" "No one, my lord king," one of the officers replied. "It is Elisha, the prophet in Israel. The words you utter in your bedchamber, he reveals to the king in Israel." "Go and find out where he is," the king said, "so that I can send people to capture him." Word was brought to him, "He is now in Dothan." So he sent horses and chariots there, and a large force, and these, arriving during the night, surrounded the town. Next day Elisha got up early and went out, and there surrounding the town was an armed force with horses and chariots. "Oh, my lord," said his servant, "what are we going to do?" "Do not be afraid," he replied, "for there are more on our side than on theirs." And Elisha prayed. "Yahweh," he said, "open his eyes and make him see." Yahweh opened the servant's eyes, and he saw the mountain covered in fiery horses and chariots surrounding Elijah. And the Armenians came down towards him. Elijah prayed to Yahweh, "I beg you to strike these people sunblind." And at Elijah's word, he struck them sunblind. Then Elijah said to them, "This is not the road, nor is this the town. Follow me, I shall lead you to the man you are looking for." But he led them to Samaria. As they entered Samaria, Elisha said, "Yahweh, open these people's eyes and let them see." Yahweh opened their eyes, and they saw they were inside Samaria. When the king of Israel saw him, he said to Elisha, "Shall I kill them, father?" "Do not kill them," he replied. "Do you kill your own prisoners with sword and bow? Offer them food and water, so that they can eat and drink, and then let them go back to their master." So the king provided a great feast for them, and when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them off, and they went back to their master. Armenian raiding parties never invaded the territory of Israel again. That's like what Jesus taught us to feed your enemy and to give them drink. Samaria besieged the famine. It happened after that Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, mustering his whole army, marched on and laid siege to Samaria. In Samaria there was great famine, and so strict was the siege that the head of a donkey sold for 80 shekels of silver, and 1/4 cab of wild onions for 5 shekels of silver. Now as the king was passing along the city wall, a woman shouted, "Help, my lord king!" "If Yahweh does not help you," he retorted, "where can I find help for you? From the threshing floor? From the wine press?" Then the king asked, "What is the matter?" "This woman here," she answered, "said to me, 'Give up your son. We will eat him today, and eat my son tomorrow.' So we cooked my son and ate him. Next day I said to her, 'Give up your son for us to eat.' But she has hidden her son." On hearing the woman's words, the king tore his clothes. The king walking on the wall, and the people saw that underneath he was wearing sackcloth next to his body. "May God bring unnameable ills on me, and worse ills too," he said, "if the head of Elijah, son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today." Elisha foretells imminent relief. Elijah was sitting in the house, and the elders were sitting with him. The king sent a messenger ahead, but before the man arrived, Elisha had said to his elders, "Do you see how this son of a murderer has given orders to cut off my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door. Hold the door against him." Isn't that the sound of his master's step behind him? He was still actually speaking when the king arrived, and this misery plainly comes from Yahweh. Why should I trust in Yahweh? "Listen to the words of Yahweh," Elisha said. "Yahweh says this: by the time tomorrow a measure of finest flour will sell for 1 shekel, and 2 measures of barley for 1 shekel, at the gate of Samaria." The equerry of whose arm the king was leaning retorted to Elisha, "Even if Yahweh made windows in the sky, could this word come true?" "You will see it with your own eyes," Elisha replied, "though you will eat none of it." The Armenian camp is found abandoned. Now at the entrance to the gate, for they were afflicted with virulent skin disease, there were 4 men, and they debated among themselves, "Why sit here waiting for death? If we decide to go into the city, what with the famine in it, we shall die there. If we stay where we are, we shall die just the same. Come on, let us go over to the Armenian camp. If they spare our lives, we live. If they kill us, well, then we die." So at dusk they set out and made for the Armenian camp. And when they reached the confines of the camp, there was not a soul there. For Yahweh had caused the Armenians in their camp to hear a noise of chariots and horses, the noise of a great army. And they said one to another, "Listen, the king of Israel has hired the Hittite and Egyptian kings against us, to attack us." So in the dusk they had made off and fled, abandoning their tents, their horses, and their donkeys. Leaving the camp just as it was, they fled for their lives. The men with skin disease then reached the confines of the camp. They went into one of the tents and ate and drank, and from it carried off silver and gold and clothing. These they took and hid. Then they came back, and entering into another tent, looted it and took and hid their booty. The siege at the end. The siege at an end. The famine ceases. Then they said one to another, "We are doing wrong. This is a day of good news, yet we are holding our tongues. If we wait till morning, we shall certainly be punished. Come on, let us go and take the news to the palace." Off they went and shouted out to the guards on the city gate, "We have been to the Armenian camp. There was not a soul there, no sound of anyone, only tethered horses and tethered donkeys, and their tents just as they were." The gatekeepers shouted the news, which was reported inside the palace. The king got up while it was still dark and said to his officers, "I can tell you what the Armenians have done to us. They know we are starving, so they have left the camp to hide in the open country. They will come out of the city. They think we will catch them alive and get into the city." One of his officers replied, "5 of the surviving horses still left us had better be taken. They would die in any case, like all the rest. Let us send them and see." So they took 2 chariot teams, and the king sent them off after the Armenian army, saying, "Go and see." They followed him as far as the Jordan, finding the whole way strewn with clothes and gear, and which the Armenians had thrown away in their panic. The scouts returned and informed the king. Then the people went out and plundered the Armenian camp. A measure of finest flour sold for 1 shekel, and 2 measures of barley for 1 shekel, as Yahweh had promised they would. The king had detailed the inquiry on whose arm he leaned, and commander of the guard on the gate. But the people trampled on him in the gateway, and he died, as the man of God had foretold when the king had come down to him. What Elijah had said to the king came true. 2 measures of barley will sell for 1 shekel, and a measure of finest flour for 1 shekel. By this time tomorrow at the gate of Samaria. And the inquiry in question had replied to the man of God, "Even if Yahweh made windows in the sky, could this word come true?" "You will see it with your own eyes," Elijah answered, "though you will eat none of it." And that was what happened to him. For the people trampled him on the gateway, and he died. Chapter 8. Epilogue to the story of the woman of Shunem. Elijah had said to the woman whose son she had raised to life, that he had raised to life, "Move away with your family and live where you can in some foreign country, for Yahweh has called up a famine. It is already coming on the country for 7 years." And the woman hurried to do what the man of God had told her. She set out, she and her family, and for 7 years she lived in the Philistine territory. When the 7 years were over, the woman returned from Philistine territory and went to lodge a claim with the king for her house and her land. Now the king was talking to Gehazi, the servant of the man of God. "Tell me," he said. "Tell me," he was saying, "all about the marvels of which Elijah did." Gehazi was just telling the king now Elijah had raised the dead child to life, when the woman whose son Elijah had raised lodged her claim with the king for her house and land. "My lord king," Gehazi said, "this is the very woman, and that is her son whom Elijah raised to life." The king questioned the woman, who told him the story. The king then delegated one of the officials to her with this order: "See that all her property is restored to her, and all the revenue from her land from the day she left the country until now." Elijah and Hazael of Damascus. Elisha went to Damascus. Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, was ill, and was told, "The man of God has come all the way to us." Then the king said to Hazael, "Take a present with you and go and meet the man of God. Consult Yahweh through him, and find out if I shall recover from my illness." So Hazael went to meet Elijah, taking with him a present the best that Damascus could offer, a load for 40 camels. He arrived and presenting himself said, "Your son Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, has sent me to ask you, shall I recover from my illness?" Elijah replied, "Go and tell him, you might recover, though Yahweh has shown me that he will certainly die." Then the face of the man of God went rigid, and his look grew strangely fixed, and he wept. "Why," Hazael asked, "does my Lord weep?" "Because I know," Elijah replied, "what harm you will do to the Israelites. You will burn down their fortresses, put their picked warriors to the sword, dash their little children to pieces, disembowel their pregnant women. But what is your servant?" Hazael said. "How could this dog achieve anything so great?" "In a vision from Yahweh," Elijah replied, "I have seen you, king of Aram." Leaving Elijah, Hazael went back to his master, who asked, "What did Elijah say to you?" He replied, "He told me that you might recover." Next day he took a blanket, soaked it in water, and spread it over his face. So then Ben-Hadad and Hazael succeeded him. And we'll stop there. And God willing, we'll continue there tomorrow. And as always, I love you.